So welcome to UGBS 614 Marketing Management. My name is Dr. Sheena Boateng, and I'm your lecturer for this course. Today is our fourth lecture, and in today's session, we will be looking specifically at dealing with the competition. Now, you will agree with me that in every sector or industry, there are several firms that are offering similar products and services to the same group of customers. Therefore, in that regard, at any point in time, a firm has to be cognizant of who these other firms who are offering similar and competing products and services to them are, so that they can devise the relevant strategies to ensure that they protect their position in that particular industry or sector and remain profitable into the long term. Hence, the discussion we are going to have today with regard to dealing with the competition. Now, as usual, there are certain learning outcomes we hope to achieve by the end of the session. Today, we have 4 of such learning outcomes. The first one being to be able to explain the hypothetical market structure. The second one being to be able to understand the competitive strategies available for market leaders, as well as understand how market challengers can compete effectively, and also to be able to understand how market followers and market niches can compete effectively. So these are the 4 main learning outcomes you would have achieved once the session is through. So let's get into it. Starting from analyzing the competition. Now, why must we analyze the competition? Like I gave in the brief introduction at the start of the lecture, competitors are a regular when it comes to analyzing the performance of various firms in different industries and sectors. Hence, for a firm to be able to know their position in a particular sector or industry and know what they have to do to be able to either maintain that position or grow and maintain their profitability, they have to be able to know who their competition are. Hence, the discussion on analyzing the competition. So when we talk about competition, it basically includes all the actual and potential rival offerings, meaning that competition includes both those firms who are currently competing with the said firm in the same industry or sector, and those firms who are yet to enter into that industry or sector, but will also effectively, once they do, become competitors of the current firm in question. Likewise, competition also includes those actual and potential firms who are offering substitutes. So it's not just firms who are offering the same thing as that which our firm is offering, but also those firms who are offering products and services that are easy replacements for what we are offering to the buyer. So when we talk about competition, this is what we are referring to. And the firms who are given these rival offerings and substitutes are those that we refer to as competitors. In that regard, to be able to analyze the competition, a firm must be able to perform what we refer to as a competitor analysis. And when we say a competitor analysis, we are referring to a systematic analysis of all the individual competitors in terms of their goals, their objectives, and their strategies. And the essence of doing this is basically to help the firm to identify the strengths of weaknesses of these various competitors in terms of their goals, objectives, and strategies, and how the firm in question conducting this competitor analysis can formulate their strategies such that they will be competitive enough and facilitate their growth, even in the presence of these other competitors. So generally, what we are going to be looking at in today's session is the various strategies available to firms when it comes to formulating their competitive strategies in dealing with their competitors in their specific sector or industry. So now that we've understood what analyzing the competition entails, let's go into the hypothetical market structure. Now, hypothetically, in any market structure, there are 4 main competing firms or 4 main competing actors. Now, these actors, starting from the market leader, hold 40% of the market, whereas the market challenger, who comes after the market leader, usually holds about 30% of the market. And then the market follower holds 20% of the market. And then ultimately the market niches, who are the last of the firms, hold about 10% of the market. So together, these different competing firms, strategically named based on their position in the market and the strengths and weaknesses that they possess, hold these significant percentages when it comes to the distribution of market share. So in essence, we are going to discuss how each of these competing firms, including the market leader, the market challenger, the market follower, and the market nicher, can be able to compete effectively and grow in this hypothetical marketplace that we are talking about. And here we are using the word hypothetical because it may not be a perfect representation of what actually happens in the marketplace. However, generally in the marketplace, regardless of the sector or industry you're talking about, there will always be a market leader. There will always be a market challenger. There will always be a market follower, and there will always be a market nicher, albeit it will not always be in these percentages that we have here. However, these actors will always be present. Please, I hope we all understand.
Yes, madam.
Good. So with that understanding, let's look at the competitive strategies available to each of these competing firms in the marketplace, starting from the market leader. Now, when we talk about the market leader, we are generally referring to the firm that has the largest market share. And by virtue of the fact that they have the largest market share, they usually lead the pack in terms of leading all the other types of firms we're talking about when it comes to price changes, new product introductions, distribution coverage, as well as promotional intensity. So essentially, when it comes to the utilization and application of the marketing mix, market leaders are usually the pace setters when it comes to a particular sector or industry. However, unless this market leader we are talking about is a legal monopoly, meaning that they are offering something that no other firm offers to the buyers, it is important for them to remain vigilant. This is because the market leader position is not a permanent position. And as we have learned in previous sessions, based on changes in the marketing environment, a market leader could lose their position to another firm in that particular sector or industry if they are not responsive enough to these changes that are taking place in their environment, as well as internally within their organizations, right? So for instance, a market leader may be a market leader until an innovative product is launched by another firm who perhaps is a challenger. And this could end up unseating the market leader from their position in the marketplace. So it is very important for the market leader to remain vigilant. And in order for them to be vigilant, there are a number of strategies that they have to adopt. The first one includes to be able to expand total market demand for their products or services. The second one is to be able to ensure that they protect the current market share that they have using good defensive and offensive actions. And then third, make efforts to increase their market share, even if the market size remains constant. Now we are going to break these down one after the other and look at what each one of them entails when it comes to the specifics of the market leader's competitive strategy. And we will begin with expanding total market demand. Now, when we talk about expanding total market demand, we are talking about when the total market expands in terms of how much the market leader can sell in the marketplace over other competing firms who are within the same sector or industry. Now, to be able to expand total market demand, the market leader must do one of two things: either find new customers or find more usage for their product and service from existing customers. And we are going to break each of these down and see what they mean when they say finding new customers or finding more usage from existing customers. Now, when we talk about new customers, we are talking about the fact that the company has to go out and search for new people to use their product or service, other than the current group of customers that they are already serving. So these new groups of customers that they are looking for, who are not currently using their products, can come in three forms. One being those who might use the product, meaning that they have the capacity to use it to satisfy a particular need, but they currently do not. And to be able to get to this group, the firm has to engage in what we refer to as a market penetration strategy, which we discussed a bit of in our previous session when we were discussing the Ansoff expansion matrix. The second group we can talk about here when it comes to the company acquiring new customers is those customers who have never used the product before. So here we are supposed to look for customers who perhaps may not have heard of the product or its benefits and convince them to begin to use the product or service. And this is usually done through a new market segment strategy, where the firm goes and finds new market segments to sell their existing product or service to. And then the third group we can talk about is those who live elsewhere, where the firm uses a geographical expansion strategy to target customers in other geographic segments. So currently, if the firm is selling only to customers in Ghana, they may look at new geographic territories, like for instance, the United States or the United Kingdom, or other countries where they believe there are customers who would have a use for the product or service that they deal in. But it is important to note that in the quest of the firm to search for these new customers, they do not have to forget their existing customers, because it takes more to acquire a new customer than to maintain the custom of an existing buyer. So in as much as they are searching for new customers, they also have to be cognizant of the needs of their existing customers and guarantee that they are keeping them satisfied in as much as they are searching for new ones. So that is for new customers under expanding total market demand. Now, alternatively, the firm could find more usage from existing customers for their current products or services. And this is where marketers will try to get the current customers to increase the amount or the level or the frequency of consumption of the current products and services that they offer. Now, to increase the amount of consumption or the frequency of consumption, firms could sometimes use innovative strategies by way of packaging or product redesign. So you will realize that some firms would traditionally offer products in a particular size of packaging, but in order to enhance usage, they will either increase the size of packaging so that you will have to use more at a time, sometimes unconsciously, or they would redesign the packaging such that they will offer it in smaller packages so that you will be forced to buy more of the product at a time. Please, I hope that makes sense.
Yes,
Yes, please.
Good. Now you will realize that when you look at the pricing of larger sizes of a product and compared to smaller sizes of a product, sometimes the price difference is not all that huge. Have you noticed?
yes,
Good. The smaller ones are sometimes, in comparison to the bigger ones, quite pricey. But in the event that that is all that the firm offers, you do not have a choice than to buy just that. And because it is a smaller packaging, it will finish faster than if it was a bigger packaging. So you will be forced to buy more at that price, hence increasing the demand, right? So generally, for a firm to increase the usage from existing customers for their products and services, they could find additional opportunities for customers, to use the brand in the same basic way. So usually you will find out that a lot of products that are offered in the marketplace, especially consumer goods, are offered in different sizes of packaging. And for instance, when we talk about a product like toothpaste or shampoo, they would usually offer it in a huge value pack size or family size that you can use at home with your family. Then they will have the smaller travel sizes that you can carry with you, perhaps in your handbag or in your travel luggage, and move it conveniently from place to place. Please, I hope that makes sense.
Yes, madam.
So they'll tell you that you can buy the big size value pack and keep it in your house, buy a significantly smaller size or medium size and keep it in your office, buy a very small one and keep it in your handbag. So they are finding additional opportunities for you to use the same brand of product in the same basic way. And a typical example is hand sanitizers. So they have the huge ones you can keep in your home, the very big ones you can put at the front desk at the reception, and then the smaller ones that we carry around with us in our briefcases and our handbags, right? Or alternatively, the firm could find completely new and different ways to use the same brand. And there are so many of such products around that are used for multiple purposes, or they multitask. Some of them are directly acknowledged by the brand and marketed as such, while others are not. So a typical example is an item like rice. Rice is marketed as a product that can be used in different ways, isn't it?
Yes.
So what are the different ways they market rice as being used for? Where are the ladies? And the men who are cooking enthusiasts? Yes, Edwin, please go ahead. Edwin, I thought you were saying something.
Sorry. I said you can use it in porridge, as porridge, sorry.
Good. So they market it as being able to be used for porridge, and then for fried rice, and then for jollof rice, and for spaghetti rice, and for curry rice, and for all these different types of rice. Yes. Why, you've not heard about these different types of rice before?
No.
You've not heard of spaghetti rice? Awamo, good. Awamo, wache, you know? All of these are different ways that we can prepare rice.
Wow.
Right? And then we have the other products that are used in different ways but unconventionally. For instance, have you heard that toothpaste can be used to clean jewelry? Are you aware?
Yeah.
Good. Some people know, some people don't. Toothpaste can be used to clean jewelry and it's very effective, especially if your jewelry is not costume jewelry and it's actual silver or gold, right? Toothpaste can clean it very well because of the substance in it, which is it bicarbonate of soda? Yes. Right? So toothpaste is another product like that. Tomato paste and ketchup can also remove rust. Are you aware?
Yes.
Good.
Yes, now.
Good. Right? So these are all completely new and different ways of using different brands of products, which can help to expand the demand for these products, right? So that is the two main ways by which the market leader can expand the total demand for their products. And P4 says Coca-Cola can be used to clean sinks and WCs. Yes, that's true as well, right? Roy, you said tomato paste, but you didn't add any explanation. So I don't know if you can clarify. Great. So that is the first means by which the market leader can compete. Now, the second means by which they can compete is by protecting their current market share. And this is very, very important because remember we talked about the fact that given that the firm is going in search of greener pastures and is looking to expand their territories, doesn't mean they have to ignore what they already have. So it is very important that in as much as they are trying to expand their total demand, they also do their best to protect their current market share. And the most constructive response or the most constructive means by which they can protect their current market share is by continuously innovating. Because like we said in the beginning, the market leader being the front runner in the industry should always lead the pack when it comes to developing new products and distribution effectiveness and cutting costs, among others. So protecting the current market share begins from being innovative and maintaining that level of innovation as a market leader. So that being said, there are various strategies that market leaders can use to be able to protect their current market share. And these are in twofold, including one, using proactive marketing techniques, or two, using defensive marketing techniques. Now, when we talk about proactive marketing techniques, we are talking about the fact that in satisfying customer needs, a distinction should be drawn between one, responsive marketing, which is where the firm finds a particular need that the customer has and develops a product or service to fill it. And then two, anticipative marketing, where the firm tries to look ahead into the future, thinking of possible needs that the customer may have in the future, and then designing a product or service to meet that need should it come up. And then the third type of proactive marketing being creative marketing, which involves the firm using innovative ways to discover solutions to problems that customers have not necessarily identified that they have, but would be very grateful for if those needs are met. Now, it is important for us to note that when it comes to proactive marketing, being a market leader, the firm has no choice than to be proactive. Because like we said, if you are the market leader, then you are leading the pack. And therefore, you must always take initiative for the others to follow. So you should not wait and let the market drive your actions. You should be proactive and create the action and allow the other members of the market to follow. So in that regard, when it comes to proactive marketing, the market leader has to be one, responsive in terms of their anticipation of customer needs and fulfilling it. Because if the customer has a need that you are not fulfilling, it is going to be very difficult for you to keep them in your fold into the long term. So rather than maintaining your market share, you will be losing it because you are not responding to their current needs. Now, in addition to being responsive, you cannot become comfortable because the current group of customers that you are serving, who make up your current market share, are constantly evolving in terms of their needs and wants. And therefore, in addition to being responsive, you also have to be creative in anticipating their needs as they evolve so that you can create innovative solutions that will satisfy these needs that they are having as they are evolving in their nature as customers. So proactive marketing essentially involves the market leader being responsive to see the writing on the wall when it comes to what customers want and providing it, and also being creative in terms of providing innovative solutions to customer needs as they evolve over the years. Now, we mentioned that in addition to proactive marketing, the firm must also engage in defensive marketing. And here, when it comes to defensive marketing, it's all about them being protective of their current market share. So even when they do not launch offensives against other competing firms, they must make sure that whatever products and services that they have currently, for which there are rivals and substitutes, they do not leave any major flanks exposed for any competitor to come and attack. So here, the main aim of their defensive strategy is to reduce the probability of getting attacked by their competitors, as well as diverting the attacks that could possibly come to less threatened areas, and also to lessen the intensity of these attacks that could be coming from their competition. Now here we need to bear in mind that anything by way of a defensive strategy that the market leader uses should be both legal and ethical. Because these actions by nature, because they are defensive, are meant to reduce the competitor's ability to either launch a new product, secure distribution, or engage in any other form of creative marketing strategies that could take away portions of their market share. So by no means should whatever tactic they use to combat these competitors' ability to do this be illegal or unethical. Please, I hope we all understand.
Yes, doc.
Good. So in terms of defensive marketing, there are a total of 6 strategies that the firm can use. Yes, Isaac, please go ahead.
I think when you mentioned the defensive response, the defensive marketing, we're saying the companies need to direct the attacks to less threatening areas. Could you kindly explain further?
Okay, so you know that for every firm, usually they have different products or services that they offer. And this usually goes to those firms that either operate the house of brands concept or the branded house concept, where they have multiple brands of products and services under one umbrella. Now, you would notice that in any case, regardless of how well accomplished the company is, they always have some brands of products and services under this umbrella that perform better than others. Do you agree?
Yes.
Good. So the idea is to make sure that your competitors do not direct their attack at those brands that are not performing so well. You always want to make sure that their focus is on the stronger brands, which they do not stand a chance against, so that they will not come after your weaker brands that are more prone to fall should the competition launch a massive attack against them. So that was what I meant when I said diverting attacks to less threatened areas. Because usually when you are hit at the point where you are weakest, you are most likely to fall, isn't it?
Yeah.
Good. So I think that was what I meant.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So in terms of defensive marketing strategies, what are some of the attacks? Okay, Stephen, I'm coming to them. So these are the attacks. We are discussing them right now. Awesome. Good. So when it comes to defensive strategies, these are the different lines of attack that the firm can use. And there are 6 of them, including a position attack, flank attack, preemptive attack, counter-offensive attack, mobile attack, and then a contraction attack. Now, the decision on which of these attack strategies to use or defense strategies to use are largely dependent on the nature of the company and their goals and expectations, as well as the resources that they have at their disposal. And it also depends on the research that they have done in terms of competitor analysis to be able to determine how their competitors might react depending on the strategy that they choose. So let's look at the different defense strategies, starting from the position defense. So when we talk about position defense, it's all about the firm making sure that they consistently occupy the most desirable position in consumers' minds. And this boils down largely to their brand development and brand management strategies, because branding is all about utilizing innovative marketing programs and strategic integrated marketing communication to ensure that the firm and their brands are consistently occupying a unique position in the mind and the heart of the consumer, such that in any purchase situation, the brand that is offered by the company is what will be considered first over all other competing brands in the same category. So that is for position defense. Now for flank defense, it is where the market leader would usually erect outposts to protect a weak front or to support a possible counterattack. Now, this is where you would realize that most firms, like I said, will have multiple brands of a particular product in the same category. So that one is usually the leader and the other one acts as a flank. So let's take Nestle, for instance. Nestle produces ideal milk, isn't it?
Yeah.
Good. But they have another product in the same category, which is a flank for ideal milk. What product is that?
Carnation milk.
Carnation. Right? So this is a typical example of flank defense. They have a very strong milk, which is ideal, but they have another flank, which is going to support a possible counter-attack should any other competing brand of milk try to penetrate. So you will realize that even though other brands of milk are on the market, Ideal and Carnation still hold their own. Now, this is just one example from the Ghanaian perspective. There are so many examples internationally as well. For instance, the nursing mothers in the house. You know about Pampers diapers, isn't it?
Yes.
Good. And you also know about Love's diapers.
Yes.
Good. Now, these two products belong to the same corporation, which is Procter & Gamble, a consumer goods company. And they own these two products in the same category, where Pampers is the market leader for them in the United States, and Love's diapers is the flank for Pampers. So that is another example of how a company can be able to erect an outpost to be able to support a possible counterattack from any brand that would potentially want to compete in the same sector. Emmanuel, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'm trying to understand the flank defense. Is it that the flank is sold at a cheaper price to compete or outcompete other similar brands on the market?
Bingo.
Products on the market.
Bingo. Emmanuel, you get it, right?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Good. So moving on from flank defense, we can also talk about preemptive defense. And this type of defense is a more aggressive one, such that it involves the market leader attacking first. So they could involve them attacking one competitor at a time or attacking multiple competitors at the same time on different levels using the marketing mix elements. And that way they can be able to keep them all off balance. So if they can keep them off balance and keep them occupied, they will not be able to actively come across and compete with them. So you realize that a lot of firms would usually come up with specific products that you can see that are a direct response to a particular competitor's product that they launch. That is a typical example of preemptive defense. They want to be able to make sure that everybody is busy trying to protect what they have so that they do not have time to launch any direct attacks at them. Now, beyond preemptive defense, we can also talk about the counter-offensive defense. And here the market leader can meet their attackers frontally and hit the attackers' flanks so that they will have to pull back in order to defend themselves. And this usually happens where the competitor has some kind of characteristic or has some kind of new innovation or tool that could prove to be a little offensive or unseating to the market leader. Now, a typical example of how they can undertake this counter-offensive is by, for instance, if a competitor introduces a new product into the same category, the market leader can decide to go on a counter-offensive by strategically cutting down the prices of their products to exorbitantly low prices, way below the market average, to the point where they could even be making losses on the sale of that particular product, just to make sure that their customers are in no way tempted or attracted to this new product that has been launched by the competitor. Some too could go ahead and use lobbying to be able to ensure that they utilize the powers of the political and the legal to stop their competitors in their tracks or to inhibit their competitors' ability to be able to move forward in achieving significant strides that could possibly be a threat to their position in the industry. And this usually happens a lot when it comes to the technology industry, where we can see a lot of suing back and forth with technology companies, including more recently what happened between Apple and Huawei, isn't it?
Yeah.
Good. Right? So that's a typical example of counteroffensive. They sue each other back and forth. However, beyond the counteroffensive defense, they could also go in for a mobile defense, where the market leader decides that instead of limiting their powers to a particular product, they will stretch their domain to cover a whole genre. So they'll go for a whole generic group of products rather than focusing on one particular product. Or they will broaden themselves and diversify into other areas apart from where they are currently situated. So for instance, a typical example could be a petroleum company who just deals in petroleum products. However, in the past, we have noticed that a lot of petroleum companies have managed to broaden their markets to become not just petroleum companies, but to become more known for energy resources. A typical example is BP, who now refer to themselves as an energy company. And therefore, they are involved in everything from petroleum to coal to nuclear energy to hydroelectric energy, as well as the chemical industries as well. So they are not limiting themselves to just one domain. They are expanding into new territories within the same generic group. Alternatively, they could just diversify and go into unrelated industries. And we see this happening all the time with a lot of organizations. For instance, Apple, having expanded into the mobile phone industry, manufacturing laptops, is now going into a totally new industry where they have no footprint at all. Which is which industry? Mobile defense. Which industry?
Car.
The car industry, right? So that's a typical example of market diversification under mobile defense. Thank you very much, David, for that example, right? However, beyond these 5 defense strategies we've talked about, there's another defense strategy which is unlike the 5 we have already discussed, which is contraction defense. And this is where the firm realizes that they are no longer able to efficiently defend all the territory that they have. And therefore, by means of a planned contraction, meaning that they think long and hard and they strategize about this, they would decide to strategically withdraw some of their products and services from some of the territories in which they compete in. And these products and services they will withdraw, they will usually do from weaker markets that are not doing so well, and rather reassign those resources to buffer their performance in well-performing markets with their stronger products and services. A typical example is what happened with Unilever when they sold their margarines and spreads business. Are you aware? In 2018, Unilever sold their margarine and spreads business, including Blue Band margarine and Flora margarine. So the Blue Band we have now does not belong to Unilever. It belongs to KKR and Co. Are you aware? You are not? Okay.
Yes, you're aware.
Good. Right? So that's a typical example of a contraction defense. They realized that it was not worth their while. So they decided to withdraw completely and sell that particular interest to another company. Another example is Pringles. Pringles was previously owned by Procter & Gamble, right? The consumer goods company we just talked about. But they realized that to be able to focus in better markets, it was better to sell it off. So they sold Pringles to Kellogg's, the famous Kellogg's that manufactures all those breakfast cereals that we are very conversant with. And that's another example of contraction defense, right? So in a nutshell, these are the main 6 defense strategies that the market leader can use in order to defend their market share or protect their current market share in the marketplace. Now, the third means by which the market leader can be able to ensure that they are competitive is when it comes to increasing market share. Christopher, please, your hand is up. Go ahead.
So, Doc, just to take you back to the question of the very last point on the strategic withdrawal.
Yeah.
So for instance, for multinational corporations,
yes,
operating in more than one territory,
yeah,
if for one reason or the other, they think one market is weaker,
yes,
and
sir.
they decide to sell their assets in that particular market and maybe focus more on the territories they have stronger market presence.
Yes, sir.
Can you consider that also under the contraction defense?
Yes, please. That's contraction defense.
Defense. Okay.
Thank you, Christopher. All right. So moving on to the third competitive strategy available to market leaders. We're talking about the fact that increasing market share should also be on the agenda of the market leader. However, here we need to throw a word of caution out there to the market leader that gaining increased market share does not automatically produce higher profits for the firm. And this is usually the case when the cost of obtaining this market share exceeds the revenue or the value that the firm gets as a result of this increase in market share. And we can say the costs of obtaining the market share are higher than the revenue or the value received in a number of instances. For instance, one, we can talk about where the cost of obtaining the market share is high when there is a possibility of provoking antitrust action. Because if the firm invests so much in getting this higher market share and it provokes an antitrust action where the frustrated competitors begin to cry monopoly and decide to seek legal action to stop this firm from expanding their market share, it would be detrimental to this expansion, such that it will lead to even more cost by way of, for instance, legal fees, which will far exceed the revenue value. And a typical example is what we observed recently in our Ghanaian telecommunications industry. Please, do we remember what happened?
Yeah, MTN.
Good. Thank you. The government launched antitrust action against MTN because they were monopolizing the telecommunications industry. That's a typical example of this particular point we are talking about when it comes to the caution that the market leader has to observe when increasing their market share. Again, these costs we are talking about could come in the form of economic costs, right? Because profitability might fall with market share gains after some level. And let's use this diagram to illustrate what we are talking about. Now, this diagram shows us the degree of profitability, compared with the market share increase in percentage. Now, based on the curve, we can see that market share increases with profitability up to a point. And then profitability begins to drop as market share expands beyond a certain level. Now, this is basically what we are talking about when we talk about the fact that the cost of gaining further market share will begin to exceed the value that the firm is getting. And a typical example where this would happen is, for instance, if there are some holdout customers who, regardless of the market leader and the phenomenal nature of the products that they are offering, are not attracted to the market leader and their offering, but still prefer to deal with smaller firms, irrespective of how much the market leader expands and gains market share, they will never be able to gain the custom of this particular group. And therefore, that portion of the market will remain inaccessible to the market leader, regardless of how much market share they gain. In any case, like we said, there's a lot of legal work and public relations and lobbying that come with expanding market share. And if the cost of undertaking all these activities exceed the value that the firm is gaining as a result of that expansion, then it is not worthwhile for the firm to pursue it beyond those limits. Good. Next, we can also talk about the danger of pursuing the wrong marketing activities. Because in the desperation to expand market share, yes, Richard, please go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to give an example is with the current procurement law.
Please go ahead.
It's giving room for startups and young companies to also have a percentage in the government procurement system. So that in other ways affect other companies that already have that market share in terms of government projects. So part of it is intentionally by regulation given to small companies. So even though you might be a big player, formerly used to might have taken a bigger percentage, but now per regulation you cannot go there. So that that could be also part.
Yeah, excellent example, Richard. Thank you so much for sharing. Right? So that is exactly what we are talking about in terms of the dangers of these economic costs and not being able to remain profitable beyond some degree of market share expansion. In any case, based on Richard's example, it may not even be possible as a market leader to go beyond those limits for legal and regulatory reasons. So thank you once again, Richard. Good. So in terms of increasing market share, I was also talking about the danger of pursuing the wrong marketing activities, because the market leader, in the bid to be able to expand their market share, would, for instance, try to engage in certain marketing activities which may be wrong for their purposes at that point in time. For instance, they may try to cut prices. Now, by cutting prices more deeply than the competitors, they run the risk of not being able to achieve significant gains as a result of the price cutting, because their competition may be able to rival these price cuts by meeting them at the same point and equally cutting prices, or offering some form of additional value, which the market leader may not necessarily be able to offer to the customers at this point. And therefore, the customers would not want to switch to the market leader, thereby defeating their entire purpose for going on this price cutting activity. So the firm, being the market leader, has to be cognizant of the danger of pursuing the wrong marketing activities, all in an effort to expand their market share. And finally, the firm also has to think about the effect of increased market share on actual and perceived quality, because evidence shows that some firms tend to expand at the expense of the quality of their product or service. And this is because their focus is so much on the expansion and gaining more market share and a larger number of customers that they do not necessarily consider how this larger number of customers they are going to obtain will put a strain on their resources and their ability to continue to deliver the product value or the service value that earned them the market leader position in the first place. So in increasing market share, market leaders have to be very careful about its effect on the actual and perceived quality of their products and services, which earned them the market leader position in the first place. So essentially, these three competitive strategies that we have talked about in terms of increasing market share, protecting current market share, and expanding total market demand are the three main strategies available to market leaders if they wish to remain competitive. Now let's move on to market challengers, who come directly behind the market leaders. Now, when we talk about a market challenger, we are basically talking about those firms who usually attack the market leader and other competitors in an aggressive bid to further their market share. So just like the market leaders, they also wish to gain a larger chunk of the market. Now, when it comes to the characteristics of challengers, they are identified mainly by the high aspirations that they usually set for themselves. So unlike the market leaders who sometimes fall prey to being comfortable with their lead in the market and therefore do not see the significant need to take strides to contain the actions of other competitors or to maintain their lead, challengers are always hungry and aggressive to be able to gain more of the market. And therefore, they usually like to engage in strategies that are aggressive, that will give them an edge, if they could get one, over the market leader, as well as all the other competing firms in the marketplace. And they usually come from the angle of being the underdogs, who consumers by human nature usually like to root for. And because of that, the competitive strategies available to them are as follows. Now, the first thing in terms of competitive strategy when it comes to the market challenges is defining the strategic objective that they are going to pursue by means of this competitive strategy that they want to embark on, and the specific opponents that they would want to go after. Now, this is because the market challenger is not as powerful as the market leader, and therefore they do not have the resource strengths, as well as the various advantages we talked about in terms of product innovation, distribution capacity, among others, to be able to compete on all fronts like the market leader would. So the market challenger would usually define a particular strategic objective for their competitive strategy and decide which opponents they specifically want to go after. And here there are a number of opponents that the market challenger can decide to attack. The first one being the obvious one, which is the market leader, is the first one that they would consider. And this attack, though very high risk, given the position of the market leader in the marketplace, can sometimes pay off, especially where the market leader is not fully satisfying the needs of the customers in the marketplace. The market challenger may have a chance of actually attacking the market leader and taking over in their place. Alternatively, the challenger could attack underfunded firms that are its own size. And this will usually be effective when these firms have aging products that are at the maturity stage of the product life cycle and are generally being offered at high prices. Now, because they are underfunded, they will not be able to afford to cut prices. And this creates a clear opportunity for the challenger to attack them and take over their portion of the market. Again, the market challenger could go after and absorb small local and regional firms. And we saw this happening in Ghana a few years ago, for instance, when EcoBank Ghana took over the Trust Bank. Please, do we remember that?
Yes.
Yes. EcoBank was a multinational, right? And therefore, they had what it took to take over the Trust Bank, which was not by any means on the same scale as them. Alternatively, the market challenger could also decide to attack the status quo. And in attacking the status quo, it's all about challenging a particular way of thinking, right? Or a specific way in which things have been done in an industry or sector for a long time by most, if not all, firms in that particular industry or sector. Now, this could lead to the creation of an innovation, especially where this innovation provides a more effective way of satisfying a particular need that customers have, which the old way of doing things was not able to. So in essence, the market challenger must decide in terms of opponents, which of these four groups that they are going to go after. And once they are able to decide their strategic objective and which opponents they are going to go after, they now need to choose a general attack strategy. And like the market leader, they have different angles from which they can attack. These include the frontal attack, the flank attack, the encirclement attack, the bypass attack, and the guerrilla attack. So let's take them one after the other, starting from the frontal attack. So in a pure frontal attack, the market challenger would usually match its opponent's products, advertising, pricing, and distribution boot for boot. And the principle here is to be able to use all the resources available to enhance these elements of the marketing mix to ensure that they do it better than the opponent to be able to win. And here, the key word here is resources. So for a challenger who is deciding to use a frontal attack, they have to ensure that they have the commensurate resources to enable them to effectively use that line of attack. Otherwise, they would be swallowed up by their opponent, who, if in this case is the market leader, would automatically have a larger amount of resources at their disposal. Now, alternatively, the market challenger could use the flank attack. Now, this is another name for identifying shifts in the marketplace, particularly by way of consumer evolution in terms of their tastes and preferences, which will usually cause gaps in the market. So the market challenger can be able to identify some of these gaps, which, if they have not been identified already by the market leader or other firms in the marketplace, they can quickly rush and fill to be able to establish their position. Now, flanking, unlike the frontal attack, is particularly attractive to those challengers who have fewer resources. So if you are a challenger and you do not have enough resources to go on a full-on frontal attack, the flank attack is an opportunity that you can pursue, because you are just taking advantage of those gaps you have identified, which may not require such huge resource allocations as a full-on frontal attack would. Nonetheless, the market challenger could also look to an encirclement attack, where they can attempt to capture a wide slice of a territory by launching a grand offensive on several fronts. And encirclement, just like the frontal attack, also requires a significant allocation of resources. So if you're a challenger and you want to use the encirclement attack, you need significant resource outlays, just like for a frontal attack. Now, a typical example of an encirclement attack is when Sun Microsystems took on Microsoft using their Java software. Now, in order to be able to compete, they realized that they could not get a stronghold in the market that Microsoft was already in, which was in the computer market. So they decided to encircle Microsoft by licensing their Java software to hundreds of companies who provided various software for all sorts of consumer devices. And from then on, Java was being used in all manner of consumer electronics. An attack that Microsoft did not see coming. So that is a typical example of an encirclement attack, where Sun Microsystems was able to capture a wide slice of the territory through this offensive that they used by encircling Microsoft. Another attack strategy for the challenger is the bypass attack. Now here, the challenger can decide to just bypass the market leader or whoever their opponent is and attack other markets that they perceive to be easier and which may not necessarily be in the same sector or industry that they are currently competing in. And this could be done along 3 lines, including diversifying into unrelated products, diversifying into new geographical markets, as well as leapfrogging into new technologies. A typical example of this is what PepsiCo did to Coca-Cola in the heat of the cola wars. Now you realize that during the cola wars with Coca-Cola, Pepsi diversified into new geographical markets, where we realized that Coca-Cola has a stronghold in some geographical markets, while Pepsi has a stronghold in other geographical markets. Please, are we aware?
Yeah.
Good. But in addition to that, PepsiCo also used a number of other bypass attacks. For instance, Before Coca-Cola could launch their first brand of water, which was Dasani, PepsiCo went ahead in 1997 to launch Aquafina bottled water. And then they also went ahead to buy Tropicana in 1998. Now, Tropicana is an orange juice giant in the United States. And at the time that PepsiCo bought it, Coca-Cola had then launched Minute Maid. However, in the US market, Tropicana owned almost twice the market share of Coca-Cola's Minute Maid. So by buying Tropicana, Pepsi diversified into an unrelated product, which gave them an edge in terms of market share over the then market leader. This doesn't make sense. Hello, are you there?
Yes, we are here.
Good.
Yes, madam.
Good. Please, I hope it makes sense.
Yes, it does.
Okay. And I don't know if you're aware of this too, but PepsiCo owns Quaker Oats. Are you aware?
No.
Okay, so Pepsi owns Quaker Oats. And that is another bypass attack where they diversified into an unrelated product where Coca-Cola cannot compete with them. Mary Joy, your hand is up. Please go ahead.
Yes, please. I just want to find out, would you say the bypass attack is just like the mobile defense? Because they sound a bit the same to me, similar to me.
Okay. Now, in terms of mobile defense, we talked about the fact that the market leader is the one who usually engages in that. That's the first thing, right? And it is easier for the market leader to use a mobile defense because they have the resource outlay to do so. Are you with me?
Yes.
Good. Now, it is only bypass when you are behind and you are overtaking the one in front of you. Mary Joy, do you get me?
Okay, yes, I get
Good.
it.
So mobile defense cannot be the same as a bypass attack because the mobile defense is where you are already in the lead and you are deciding to expand your lead by doing additional things. Whereas bypassing, you are trying to do additional extra innovative things to bypass the person in front of you and take the leadership position. So Mary Joy, I hope that makes sense now.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome, you're welcome, my dear. Good. So that is for the bypass attack, in addition to the other attacks we've talked about regarding the general attack strategies that are available to the market challenger. Now, guerrilla attack, on the other hand, yes, Richmond, we are the guerrilla attack. Guerrilla attack, on the other hand, consists of small intermittent attacks, which could be conventional and unconventional, including engaging in, for instance, selective price cuts, intense promotional blitzes, and occasional legal action. So you realize that unlike the bypass strategy, that is a full-on strategy involving diversification into different sectors, for the guerrilla attack, you are not diversifying. You are staying in the same sector and in the same line of business, but you are using selective strategies by way of intermittent attacks to see if you can gain an edge in the marketplace. And like we just saw, you can do this through selective price cuts or using intensive promotion or sometimes using actual legal action to harass your opponent and get them to go off balance so that you can secure your position, right? But just like the encirclement strategy that we talked about and the frontal strategy, guerrilla campaigns can also be very expensive, especially when you're talking about a strategy like selective price cuts. Because when you're cutting prices, you are essentially taking away from your profit margins, which will require a significant commitment of resources, right? So if you are going all in, you have to go all in, especially with a guerrilla attack, to be able to beat your opponent. So from what we have learned, some of these attacks, though they are available to all market challengers, should be distinguished depending on how much resources the market challenger has at their disposal to spend. Richard, please go ahead.
Yeah, madam. So, in as much as talking about all these attacks, excuse me to say, where does morality play in this approach in terms of like the business morals, you know?
Could you come a bit clearly?
Okay, so let's say, you know, some companies put certain attacks which they know they are not true, but then just to ensure that their name are always in the public, right?
Okay, so what you're talking about is not necessarily one of these attacks we are talking about, but you're talking about PR. Because any form of communication that is put out there, that is saying something about the organization in relation to its competition, is PR or publicity. Richard, are you with me?
Oh, okay.
Good.
Okay.
So if the firm is putting out some kind of communication that is not true, then it's an issue of morality, like you are saying. And therefore, they have to be able to make it right. That's why companies can sue for defamation. Are you with me?
Okay.
Yes, and they will win. But from where you are coming from, we can talk about the legality and the ethicality of the use of these attack strategies. I think that's what you're trying to refer to, isn't it, Richard?
Yeah, that's
so there's nothing wrong with using these attacks. I mean, competition is healthy. It brings out the best in firms. It makes them put forward the best innovations to ensure that value is created for all stakeholders concerned. But when that competition becomes unfair, then it's unethical. And when the firm resorts to illegal means to be able to gain this edge, then it is not acceptable. And it is unhealthy competition. And therefore, it has to be checked. That's why, Richard, like you said, there are laws that sometimes regulate some of these attacks and how they can be used. So, for instance, in the example you gave, in terms of expanding market share, the firm is allowed to expand as much as they want. However, there's a certain percentage they cannot exceed because some portion is reserved for a certain kind of firm or opponent in the marketplace. So, Richard, I hope your question is answered.
Yes, madam. Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. Richmond, please go ahead.
Doc, I want to also ask this question, whether if we can actually see it from any of these angles. I remember when Glo came to Ghana,
yes,
there was a time when we were about to launch their 3G.
Yes, sir.
It was a big program they're supposed to do, but unknown to them, the day they were supposed to launch the program, there was a fiber cut. And the data services, it was a new data package they were also coming up with. Data services were also down the same day they were about to launch the program. Later on, investigations revealed that there was actually a guy in the data sector who was poached by a giant telecommunication company who was actually working indirectly for them. So that day he was being paid. That day he actually stepped down the power and the things that are supposed to make the system run. He actually did something, and it didn't actually work. So the day they were supposed to run the program or promote or launch the program, the systems were actually not working. So this kind of it is unfair anyway. But I don't know. Let me just ask: is it fair, legal, or illegal? And what would you have to say to that?
In this case, was the gentleman supposed to do that as part of his job?
No.
Then it's not legal. And should Glo have taken them on, they would have had a strong case. Because why of all days that particular day? Richmond, you get me?
Yes.
Yeah. And knowing specifically that those particular things that he was doing were going to affect directly what Glo was doing. They have a case. So it's not legal, Richmond. But was there any legal
Okay.
action taken against him?
He was just relieved of his post.
Yeah. But they didn't go after who he was supposedly working for.
No, no.
Yeah. Those things often happen, eh? Richard, please go ahead. Thank you very much, Richmond, for sharing. That was very illuminating. Richard, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to give a scenario, but I don't know what attack it could be. So currently, if online, many software companies, when they are promoting their products, so they mention other companies and say that you will save like 2 hours of work if you use ours than using company A, B, C, and D. So in a process of marketing, they are also mentioning your company name, saying that it's not good. So in that way, what form of marketing approach is that? By explicitly mentioning your competitor's name that their product is not good in your process of marketing.
That's a guerrilla attack. So they are doing it in terms of promotion.
Yeah.
Right? Good. Now, there are typical examples of these what I give when I'm teaching promotion, particularly in global marketing, about how firms can directly and indirectly attack their opponents using their promotion. Let me see if I can show you one very quickly. Very funny, isn't it? So they are saying that, Whopper, you are bigger than the Big Mac. So why are you trying to fit into a Big Mac box? It will not work. Let's look at another one. What does this one say?
Big Mac seems more like a medium.
This is another one, isn't it? Another guerrilla attack. So again, what are they saying? Again, what are they saying?
The Fupa is bigger than the Big Mac.
It's bigger than a Big Mac and it's better. Right? So Richard, this is typical guerrilla attack and it's perfectly legal. As long as you do not make it so obvious. But technically, anyone who hears Big Mac knows who the Big Mac belongs to, isn't it?
Yeah.
Madam, even in Ghana, I think the telecommunication networks have been doing it.
Thank you. Right? It's perfectly legal. Thank you, Isaac. It's perfectly legal. So, Richard, I hope your question is answered now.
Yes, madam. Yeah.
Like, drop that.
Yeah, that's a good one. Okay, Steven says, who or what determines which level of the hypothetical market structure that a firm is placed? For the telecoms industry, we know NCA has the data, so they are able to tell. But how about the other industries? Okay, so like you said, NCA is the regulator of the telecommunications industry. So definitely whoever the regulator of the other industries are should be able to tell us the structure of those. So for instance, when we talk about insurance, who will we be looking to for those statistics? Insurance, who will we be looking to for those statistics? NIA, good, right? And so on and so forth. So Stephen, I hope that answers your question. Awesome.
Yes, madam, but how about industries that are not regulated?
Good. So usually for industries that are not regulated, you know that there are ways of obtaining such data, isn't it?
Not really, please.
Good. Now, even though an industry is not regulated, the data that is put out by the company is collated and compiled by various agencies. That is how sometimes we can have independent industry reports being produced by auditing firms like KPMG and PricewaterhouseCoopers. Are you with me?
Yes.
Good. So they would usually compile the metrics that are available to them and use those to judge. And you know that for auditing purposes, firms are always mandated to publish their, annual reports with their performance data and all that, isn't it, Stephen?
Yes, please.
Good. So some independent auditing bodies like KPMG and Pricewaterhouse would usually compile this information and look at the performance as has been reported by all these firms together, and add other independent sources of information to be able to arrive objectively at who perhaps the market leader is and who the followers are, and so on and so forth. Stephen, I hope you get me.
Yes, thank you very much.
You're welcome, Stephen. All right, so we are done with the market challenger. Now we are moving into the territory of the market follower. Now, the market followers are usually the ones that do not want to rock the boat. So they want to maintain their market share and do everything they can to do so, even if it includes learning from or borrowing from the market leaders and the challengers, right? Now, scholars have argued that market followers would usually like to engage in what we refer to as innovative imitation. And this is where they would usually go ahead and piggyback the investments that market leaders and challengers have made into developing innovative new products, right? And getting them into distribution and informing and educating the market. And then they piggyback aspects of these products to be able to develop and market their own. So when it comes to market followers, you will realize that they would usually take what has already been put out there by the market leaders and the challengers and then modify it a bit to some extent, and then use it to achieve their own purposes. Now, usually the benefit of making all this investment in innovation and distribution and informing and educating consumers about the product is market leadership, which usually the market leaders have. And because the market followers do not want to rock the boat and go and quote unquote irritate or dare the market leader, they would usually hide in their own corner and just copy a bit of what the market leader has. And they will sometimes go ahead and copy and add their own improvements and enhancements. Now, even though by doing this, they will not automatically become the market leader, because let's face it, the original innovation and idea and everything belongs to the market leader. And you do not want to get on their bad side for them to take you full on using their strategies. But with these imitations that they do and the little copying they do with the few improvements and enhancements they add, they are able to get significant amounts of profits, right? Because let's face it, they did not invest the initial huge amount of resources to do all the background work to get these products to market and get them to take on with the consumer base, right? So generally, they will just copy, add a few enhancements and put it out there and earn a good amount of profit. And generally, being followers, their aim is not to become market leaders or to be challengers. They just want to maintain their market share and earn enough to cover their expenses and get their little profit. Now, this is not to say that a market follower does not have a strategy, because most of the time in taking portions of these ideas, they have to have a strategy or a means by which they're going to refine or add on to these elements they have copied in order to be able to carve their own place in the market, right? So when we talk about market followers, they would usually copy here and there, but they will try to bring their own distinctive advantages to the target market by adding on to what they have copied, right? And in doing this, to be able to ensure that they can make significant amounts of profit, they will defensively try as much as possible to keep their manufacturing costs low and the products and services at the highest level of quality, so that they would give the consumer a reason to choose their brand over the others, and subsequently help them maintain the market share that they currently have. And they also have an opportunity because with the portions that they have copied and added onto, and the distinctive advantages that they have created using them, they can enter new markets that may open up from time to time and introduce these products to the customers in these new markets who have not as yet been introduced to the purported originals from which they copied or which they are imitating. And that presents a unique marketing opportunity for them. So in terms of competitive strategies for market followers, we can talk about 3 of them. The first one is the cloner. Now, cloners would usually emulate the market leader's products, including the nature of the product, its name, and the packaging with slight variations, right? So let's look at a typical example being the photograph we have in front of us on the slide. You can see that the product on the left is the original, isn't it? That's the Kellogg's Frosted Flakes. Please, can we see that?
Yes, madam.
Good.
Yes.
Now the clone is the one we have on the left, which is also called Frosted Flakes. And as you can see from what has been poured into the bowls, they basically look identical. But you can see that in terms of the packaging, there are slight variations, isn't it?
Yes, madam.
Good. You can see that there's slight variation in terms of the color, in terms of the positioning of items, in terms of the mascot. You can see that for Kellogg's Frosted Flakes, it's a tiger with orange and black stripes. And for the Great Value Frosted Flakes, it is a white polar bear, among other minute variations, right? And this is an example of a food item in the consumer goods industry that has been cloned, being Kellogg's Frosted Flakes being the original product and Great Value Frosted Flakes being the clone. And again, technology firms are also often accused of being cloners very, very often. Given that these days we can see some of the phones that we use do not really bear any significant differences, except differences in name and sometimes a little bit of packaging. A typical example is the Techno phones and some of the Samsung phones, isn't it? Has anyone observed that some of the Techno models are very similar to some Samsung models? Hello, has anyone made that observation? Good. Diana says yes. Good. Right? So that is for a cloner. So when we talk about a market follower who is a cloner, this is essentially what they do. And because the product is not exactly identical to the original, it is perfectly legal and ethical. Great. So Diana, you said Samsung, Techno, and Huawei. Yes. A lot of their models bear striking similarities to each other. So thank you very much, Dynamam, for that contribution. Now, aside from being a cloner, another competitive strategy a market follower can adopt is to be an imitator. And this is where they copy some things from the leader, but they differentiate on packaging, advertising, pricing, or location. And here the leader doesn't mind as long as the imitator doesn't attack aggressively, right? So let's look at a typical example of a product that has been imitated by a market follower. At a snapshot, they look identical, isn't it? But once you begin to look more closely, you can see that one is an imitation of the other, because the name is different. The packaging looks a bit different, but you can see the similarities, can't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, right? So this is a typical example of an imitator who in this case is the Natoka brand that is imitating the almighty Nutella. Great. Now, aside from being an imitator, the market follower could also decide to be an adapter.
Madam Rachel.
Yes, Richard.
I was seeing the two as separate brands until you mentioned the name. So are you pointing that based on the sound of their name?
No. Nutella has been on the market for the longest time. Unless, Richard, you are not an avid consumer of chocolate spread. But those who are avid consumers of the product.
No, we eat the bread like that.
Good. Where are the Nutella? Where are the Nutella enthusiasts? The chocolate spread people. Where are they?
Yeah, here.
Good. You could immediately see it, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Delight, please go ahead. Okay, your hand is back down. Great. Right. So Richard, perhaps because you are not an avid consumer of the product, so you may not notice. But for we, the Nutella fans, we know exactly what is going on here. Right? Because as soon as you see, you can see that they are trying to copy aspects of the thing. Look at they copied very, very basic elements, right? But you can see that the cover of the jar is the same. The name was both begin with NU. They both have a knife with some spread on it. They both have nuts on them. And the label is white for both of them as well. Entry 14 says imitator. Example, Aviat imitating Avant for baby products. Really? Wow, I haven't seen that one yet, but I don't doubt that it's out there. So very good example, 14. Right? So in imitating, this is what happens. And because it is not very literal, it's not so obvious. So the way Richard didn't see it, that is the same reason why it is still going on and it is perfectly legal and ethical, because it is not a direct threat or an aggressive attack on the market leader. And therefore it's permissible, right? Similarly, the market follower could be an adapter, where they can take the market leader's products and adapt or improve upon them, right? And once they improve upon the market leader's product, they can decide to either sell it in a different market or grow this particular product to become a challenger in future. And that is where, because they have improved upon what the market leader already has, they are in a strong position to aggressively attack the market leader with the possibility of taking over their place in that particular sector or product category, right? But like I've been saying all this while, it is very important for us to appreciate that these strategies should be legal and ethical in order to be permissible. So once some illegal and unethical dimensions come in, it is no longer a conducive or permissible competitive strategy, right? And that is for the market followers. Now, last but not least, we can talk about the market niches. And these are the ones who do not necessarily think about huge amounts of market share or occupying a significant portion of the territory. They basically just focus on 7 small segments that these larger firms we are talking about in terms of the market leaders and the challengers and the followers usually ignore, right? And by virtue of their nature, given that they do not have the resource endowment and the power and the gravitas to compete with these 3 other forms of competing firms, smaller firms would normally avoid targeting markets where they would actively have to compete with these larger firms. And they would usually go in for smaller markets, right? Which the larger firms would typically not have any interest in because they do not have the numbers that they are looking for to be able to gain this market share that we have been talking about and be able to expand, right? However, these small markets that the niches focus on can over time end up becoming sizable in their own right. And therefore, with the niches focusing on these markets, they have a leg up in terms of serving these markets and benefiting from these future expansions or growth that will take place in these markets that they are serving. So in terms of market niches, firms with low shares of the total market can become highly profitable through smart niching. Meaning that the fact that you are a market nicher does not mean you should just pick any small market at all and focus on it. You need to be able to make sure that the market that you are choosing is profitable enough to warrant you contributing or dedicating significant resources to marketing a particular product or service to that particular market segment, right? And because the market is not so large, it is very easy for the market nicher to learn about the unique individual needs of the customers within these markets. And that way they are able to serve them better and offer them high value, which these other larger firms who usually deal with markets on a mass level would generally ignore. And the best part of this is that because they know the individual needs of the target customers in these markets, and they are in a position to serve each of these needs at the best possible level, they can go ahead and charge a premium price for the high value that they are offering to the customers in these markets. Because given that the markets are not so large, they can achieve lower manufacturing costs and build a strong corporate culture and vision that they can easily implement and achieve within this market. So essentially, when we are comparing market niches with the other larger firms like the market leaders and the market followers and the market challengers, market niches would usually be able to achieve higher margins, which will get them the profitability they are looking for. Whereas with the mass marketers, like the market leaders who have a larger market share, it's all about achieving higher volume to be able to gain the levels of profitability that they are looking for. Now, when it comes to market niches, despite their ability to charge a premium price and their ability to be able to earn high margins, it is very important for us to appreciate that niches can weaken over time. And because of that, a market nicher cannot just concentrate on one market niche all the time. They must be futuristic in terms of their thinking and focus on several niches so that in the event that one niche becomes weak, they can be able to rely on the strengths of another niche to augment their efforts in the weaker one. That is why multiple niching is preferable to single niching. Because when a firm has two or more niches, they can diversify their strengths and their interests such that they can augment the weaknesses of one niche with the strength of the other and increase their chances of survival. Whereas if they focus on just a single niche, they run the risk of losing everything once that particular niche becomes too weak to generate any form of meaningful profitability or value to them as a firm. And in that regard, there are various niche specialist roles that market niches can assume in order to guarantee their survival in the marketplace. Now, from this diagram, we can see that there are several of them, right? And the key idea here is to ensure that whatever niches they choose, they are able to successfully implement their strategies in them in order to survive into the foreseeable future. Richard, please, your hand is up. Kindly go ahead.
Okay, so talking about the niche market, so how will you describe this scenario? So if you look at the plastic waste industry.
Yes, please.
Now with the big players, they more of like collect from these aggregators, and these aggregators collect from these small people.
Yes,
please. In the end, these smallholder people or these aggregators more of like supply to these guys. So are we going to say that the big guys still hold the whole market share, or the market share for the small collection is just for like the small companies? How will you describe the market share? Because at the end of the day, it's these small aggregators that are supplying to the big guys.
Yes. So the small aggregators are generally not thinking about gaining significant market share. They have a particular focus, and that is what they focus on doing, and they remain profitable. Are you with me, Richard?
Yeah.
And you will notice that these aggregators usually have regular people or places that they get their supply from, isn't it?
Yeah.
Good. Which the market leaders do not necessarily have any link or connection with.
Yeah.
Good. So I hope you understand now.
Yeah. Sort of.
Great.
Yeah.
So in this case, the aggregators are the niches. And they are not looking to gain significant market share or to expand, no. They are focusing on their niche, which is collecting from a particular group or a particular number of communities and then putting it together and giving it to this other market leader to do their business. Richard, I hope it's clearer now.
Yeah, it's clearer. It's clearer. So they don't see them more of like a competitor in that sense.
No.
All right. Okay.
Because they are not aggressively coming after them like the market challenges.
Sure.
Awesome. Good. So there are several niche specialist roles, right? We can talk about the end user specialists, and these are the firms that generally specialize in one type of end use customer, right? And a typical example is where we talk about the value-added resellers who customize computer hardware and software for specific customer segments, and then they earn a premium in the process. Good. We can also talk about vertical level specialists, and they are firms that specialize at some vertical level of the production or distribution value chain, right? So for instance, a copper firm may concentrate on producing raw copper components or finished copper products. They will not think about expanding elsewhere, which is a typical example of what Richard was talking about a few moments ago. So these particular aggregators specialize at some vertical level of that value chain, which involves collecting and recycling plastics. Then we have the customer size specialists. And this is where firms concentrate on different sizes of customers. So you have some niches who concentrate on small customers, others medium-sized customers, and others large customers, right? However, when it comes to niches, you notice that they generally serve the smaller groups of customers that are neglected by the major competitors, like the market leaders and the market challengers. Then we have the specific customer specialists, and these firms limit themselves to selling to one or few customers who share a specific characteristic, right? So for instance, many firms will decide to sell their entire output to a single company. So they will not focus on selling to a large number of companies, no. Their products can only be exclusively found in the branches of one particular company. And that's a specific customer specialist. Then we can talk about geographic specialists, where the firm sells only in a certain locality or a certain region or a certain area of the world, right? And this is where that example of one of our course mates currently here who talked about territories comes in. Right? Firms would usually concentrate their activities in specific geographic territories and then pull out where they feel those territories are no longer favorable. Again, we can talk about product or product line specialists. And this is where a firm carries or produces only one product line or product. So they do not worry themselves about expanding into multiple products or diversifying into anything else. They just focus on one thing or one product. And that is what they produce consistently over time. Richmond, please go ahead.
Madam, please, what would you say about a company that is into maybe that is a specified product, and because one of its products is not actually doing well? For example, looking at the Boston Consultancy Group matrix, and maybe that product is a dog, So they've decided to niche that product into a certain market, but they have another product which is actually a cash cow, and therefore it is also doing well in another market. Such a company, where do we place that company among these four groups, whether a market challenger or niche, or just that this one, they are just trying to be niching according to the, or maybe they are just trying to maybe.
I wouldn't call it niching, because you can only call it niche if that particular product, which is either a cash cow or a dog, is serving a small market segment. So again, the size of the markets that they serve is the primary differentiator here.
Okay.
So this time we are talking about what's the size of the market that they serve? What is their market share? Are they the largest in their category?
Oh, I'm actually looking at collectively, looking at the products that the company actually
So this
sells.
is where it will be difficult.
There are some products that are being, yes.
This is where it will be difficult because we are discussing this whole thing in a particular context.
Okay.
Starting primarily from the size of the company and the amount of the
But in this context, is it like relating to a particular product, just one product?
Which one? The niching?
Yes, yes.
If we are talking about a product or product line specialist, then it means they produce only one product.
Okay.
Which one do you get in now?
Yes.
Good. So they do not have any other products for them to say that one is a cash cow, one is a dog, and one is a star, and the other is a question mark. They have only one. Awesome. Okay. Richard, please go ahead. Your hand is up. Or is the old one?
No. I think Richmond has confused my understanding on this topic.
Richard, no, please help. Let us help you clarify.
Yeah, so is he talking about, are we talking about the product being a niche product or the company itself being a niche company?
Good. So that is where he didn't qualify. So he was talking in general. He wasn't referring to a particular company.
Okay, all right.
Good. Okay. So I hope you are no longer confused, Richard.
Yeah, I get it.
We thank God. Good. All right. Great. So still on the discussion, we can also talk about a niche specialist whose basic focus is on a particular product feature. So they specialize in producing a certain type of product or product feature. And that is all that they specialize in. So for instance, if you are looking for instance, a particular kind of cake art, previously, those elaborate cake designs were not very common in Ghana. There were only few people who were able to do those elaborate cake designs that we used to see on cake boards. Who has ordered a birthday cake, a character birthday cake recently? Or an artistic wedding cake? No one? But I think you can understand where I'm coming from. Previously, those elaborately designed wedding cakes were not common in Ghana here. True or false?
Yeah, the wedding.
Yeah. If you wanted a really well-designed birthday cake, there was only one place people will always refer you to. Who knows that place? Keys.
A
big shop, yeah. Big shop or Frankie's. Those two places were the places where you could get like those really nice, elaborately decorated birthday cakes. But now it's on a different level, right? Edwin, please go ahead.
Yes, I want to mention another type of niche market that is gradually growing. I'm into that area as well.
Yes,
and it has to do with customized chocolate.
Thank you.
You know, that is a new area that is specialized to individual customers.
Good.
And that will fall under maybe the.
Good. Right, and that's a typical example of the product feature specialist. Yes, Edwin. Very good example. Thank you very much, Edwin, for sharing. Right, so that's a good example of the product feature specialist. Okay. Again, we can talk about job shop specialists. They specialize in customizing their products for individual customers. And this one is very common around us. You can order a customized birthday cake. You can order a customized engagement attire. Where are the ladies? Right now, no kente design is the same as the other. Everyone's design is unique because it's customized to your own taste. You can even customize your suits. Abrantia, the gentleman, is excellent when it comes to customizing male suits for their weddings, right? So that's a typical example of job shop specialists. Then we have quality price specialists. And this is where the niche firm that we are talking about operates at the low or high quality end of the market. So a typical example they are giving here is Macintosh Laboratories that only makes high performance luxury audio systems. And their hand-built audio products appeal to audiophiles everywhere. Right? So they design a product that is able to appeal to both ends of the market, low end and high end. And then we have the service specialists who offer one or more services that are not available from other firms, right? So for instance, a bank might take loan requests over the phone and hand deliver the money to the customer. I don't think this is very common in Ghana here. But I know that there are some specialized services that are offered to certain prestige customers by some banks. Please, the bankers among us, please, can you give us examples of some of these specialized services that are given to the prestige customers? We just want to know what we should be aspiring to.
Cash pickup services.
Cash pickup. Please, can you elaborate?
Yeah, there are some customers that we go free of charge. We don't charge them.
Wow. So you just go and pick out the money
from their shop. So whenever they are ready, they just call the bank.
Wow.
Yeah, for them.
Wow.
At no fee.
Wow. One day we too will grow.
We will reach there.
Inshallah.
So that's a good example of a service specialist, Richmond. Thank you for that example. And then finally, we can talk about channel specialists, right? And this is where the firm specializes in serving only one channel of distribution. So for instance, the person could specialize in just doing wholesale or just retail, right? And we see this happening a lot with those who deal in the drinks and the beverages. So for instance, a soft drink company makes a very large size serving available only at gas stations. Or maybe they make it available only in hotels and restaurants. Or they decide that we are simply sticking to this our neighborhood kiosk and we are serving just these people in this neighborhood. Because that is the channel of delivery that they want to use. So you will realize that in the example that they gave where a firm is serving only one channel of distribution, like only gas stations or only hotels or only restaurants, you realize that you can only purchase that particular product when you go to this hotel or this restaurant. You can't get it in any other hotel or restaurant. Is there any example of a drink or some item that you can get at certain locations that you cannot get at others? I know a typical example is the tickets that are sold for some of these events. So for instance, when they are doing VGMAs or December to Remember, you can only get tickets at strategic places. One very popular strategic place you always get a ticket like that is Airport Shell. True or false?
True.
Yeah, every major event in Ghana, if they are mentioning the places where you can get a ticket, it's Airport Shell. I don't know why. Please, what is so special about Airport Shell? Is it because it's near the airport?
The place is a central location in terms of access.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah.
so that means that wherever anybody is going, they'll definitely use that route at any point in time. So it makes it a very strategic location. Right. Okay. Right. Thank you for that explanation, Edwin. Right. So that is for channel specialists. So at any point in time, if you want to be a market nature, you can assume any of these specialist roles to be able to create multiple niches for yourself to guarantee your survival into the long term. So in a nutshell, we have discussed the 4 main types of competitors we can have in a particular sector or industry, and the various competitive strategies available to them, and the roles that they assume when it comes to competition in a given industry or sector. So on that note, we've come to the end of our lecture for today. And I'd like to ask finally if there is any question that anyone has to ask or anything they need clarification on before we call it a day. In the meantime, please, I hope your marketing plan assignment is going well. If you are facing any challenges, please don't hesitate to reach out. Ahmed knows how to contact me so that we can give you any assistance that you may need. Yes, Christopher, please go ahead.
So just taking it back to the example of the niche competition strategy. So using the market for bottled water as an example. So let's just take Belapa as a case study here.
Yes.
So generally we know them to be producing the generic bottled water, but quite recently too, they've been focusing on producing a very special packaged bottled water. I think it's in a glass bottle.
Yes.
And it comes in either in the format of still or sparkling water.
Yes, please.
And generally they make it available to the very high-end hotels.
Yes, please.
So for that particular market, can we consider it as a niche product for say the very high-end hotels?
Yes, it's a niche market because you will realize that apart from those places, you can't find that bottled water anywhere. The glass bottle, I don't see it being sold anywhere.
Okay.
Yeah. So Christopher, it's a niche.
All right, thanks.
You're welcome, Christopher. Please, by the way, have you tried it? How does it taste like?
I don't think it's any different from what we have, except the sparkling water, which tastes like sparkling water indeed.
Please, I have not tasted sparkling water before. Can you please elaborate? I'm being very serious, like.
No, I mean it's.
Is it like the soft drinks only
exactly
without
like
the flavor? Okay.
Exactly like your tonic.
Okay.
Yeah, I think tonic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. 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 Thank you very much, Christopher.
Thank you too.
Richard, you said when a company produces for below 18 years, where do they fall? So they are choosing to focus on a particular niche of 18-year-olds. But you see, we are trying to make it either black or white, which could create some problems for us because you will realize that when it comes to segmentation, it's neither black or white. There's always a multitude of segmentation bases being used. So for instance, you will rarely find a firm segmenting a market based solely on age. They would use age being a demographic variable in conjunction with other demographic variables or other bases of segmentation, like maybe physiological basis or behavioral basis or geographical basis, right? So depending on how the segmentation is done and the size of that segment, we can be able to determine whether or not it is a niche market. And ultimately, the size of the segment in addition to the composition of the segment and what they are being offered by way of a product or service, all these together will help us to determine whether or not indeed it is a niche or it belongs to a challenger or a market leader or a follower. So Richard, I hope that clarifies it for you. So it's neither black or white. Aha. It's more complicated than that. But when we are learning the concepts, we need to learn them the way we are so that we can be able to know all the possibilities. And then when it comes to strategy formulation, we can mix and match which strategies will benefit us based on our specific circumstance. Great. So in the absence of anything else, I believe we can call it a day, right?
Yeah.
Great. It's been a fantastic session. Thank you all. Yes, Angela, is it Angela or? Pardon?
No, I was just saying thanks. The session has been good.
Okay, yes, indeed it has. Indeed it has. All right. So I wish you all a lovely day, at least what's left of it, and then a lovely week ahead. May God be with you all. Please stay safe, keep observing safety protocols, and we'll meet again in our next session. All the best.
Thank you, madam. Thank you, madam.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.